Hi there, class. This is the next lesson in our series looking at how to think critically as we prepare for Achievement Standard 3.5. What we're looking today is we're looking at identifying different schools of thought, or in particular different ways of thinking. The learning intentions for today's little mini lesson are for you to recognise two different paradigms often used in sport. And when we talk about a paradigm, we talk about ways of thinking. We also want to be able to explain the 4 dimensions of hauora as described by Dr. Mason Jury's model of Te Whare Tapawhā. And finally, we want to explain a technocentric approach to sport and give some examples of what this means. As you work through this little lesson, take some notes, or perhaps you'd like to add to your notes from the homework task that you completed yesterday. You may also like to have your vocab sheet handy so that if you come across any terms that you are unfamiliar with or that you think will be important to our learning, that you can jot them down as we go. So first of all, let's have a look at a paradigm. I've just very quickly done a quick Google search, and our definitions here come from Wikipedia first up. So in science in particular, which is what we're looking at, but also in epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge, a paradigm is a distinct concept or thought pattern. Or the Google search definition would be a typical example or pattern of something, a pattern or a model. And an example of this would be society's paradigm of the ideal woman. And we can look critically at that as well. I'd like to introduce you first to a holistic paradigm, recognising the big picture and interconnectedness between different contributing factors. Now, we've already looked very briefly at this model of the 4-sided house, or Te Whare Tapawhā, which was developed by Dr. Mason Jury. This model describes 4 different and equally important dimensions of well-being, or hauora. These 4 areas include taha tinana, which is our physical well-being, in fact things like physical activity, personal hygiene, good nutrition, adequate sleep and rest, all of those sorts of things that are particularly linked to our physical well-being. It also recognises taha hinengaro, which is our mental and emotional well-being. This is very much around our thinking and our feelings and how those things contribute to our overall well-being. A third dimension is taha whānau, which recognises our social well-being and the importance of relationships and the influences that our relationships have on our well-being. And finally, the place of taha wairua, which is our spiritual well-being. Now, spiritual well-being can include a religion, for example, but a better way of looking at it is looking at a person's attitudes, values, or beliefs, and how that can impact them and influence their thinking and their actions. When we consider this model, we need to consider the fact that if one of these dimensions of well-being is not well or not healthy, then that influences the overall person, and that all 4 are equally necessary. Being able to stand back and recognise the big picture and recognise all of the contributing influences is an example of holistic thinking. The other important thing is how each of these things is interconnected. So, for example, if we are suffering from an injury, how can that affect our thinking and feeling patterns? Or if we've had a falling out with a group of friends, perhaps some teammates from our sport, how does that then influence our physical well-being in terms of our participation in that particular activity? When we apply this way of thinking to looking at our multi-choice, our multi-sport event, then we also need to be considering the choices that we make when we train and the things that are important to us when we organise our training plan. This is all part of the holistic approach.